Welcome, everybody, to the show. I'm excited to talk about a topic that we haven't really covered too much, maybe once or twice in the last 10 years, and it's definitely time. And I've got the expert on hand. Art Blank is with us today from Shield Your Body. Welcome, Art, to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you again.
You too. So let's start with, I guess, how did you get started in this business? I mean, what makes someone want to study electromagnetic frequencies and then develop technology to which, again, are you just I'm a healthy person, so I care about my health but what led you down this path?
Sure. So, my father was Dr. Martin Blank, and he was one of the world's leading researchers and advocates. He was researching the health effects of electromagnetic radiation, and then later in his career, really participated a lot in sort of the movement to make this technology safer. And in 2012, he was writing a book about his career and everything he'd learned. And the book became overpowered. It's still available on Amazon and at other bookstores. And because this book was aimed at general audiences, not other scientists and academics, he asked me for help to write the book. So I jumped in and co-wrote Overpowered with him. And it was in the course of writing that book that I came up with the idea for what became Shield Your Body, which is namely, not only does technology have to become safer, but there's still no way around getting around EMF exposures. And so there have to be safer, not only should the technology be made safer, but there needs to be safer ways for people to use those technologies because these exposures are unavoidable. And so that's, again, where the idea for Shield Your Body emerged from.
Were you intrigued by his work sort of as you were growing up and thought you'd just sort of follow in his footsteps, or were you on a different path and then he asked you to sort of get on board?
Oh, well, yeah, I don't view this as following in his footsteps because he was a scientist and I'm not. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm also an educator. So I guess in that sense, I share aspects of my path with him. But no, I was aware of his work when I was growing up. And I knew that's why we never had a microwave oven. And I knew when I got my first cell phone, which I'm of the generation where I got my first cell phone at 22. When I got my first cell phone, I knew to really keep it away from my head. And so I knew things like that, but I wasn't really aware of what the science said and really what his work entailed until Overpowered. At that point, I had written a couple of books and I taught at the University of Southern California. So that was the part of the project that interested me most, was figuring out ways of communicating these rather complex topics in a way that could be accessible and understandable. So that's how I got into the book. And it was in the course of writing the book that I came up with the idea. And at the time, there were EMF protection companies out there, but not really very many, and not really making consumer-friendly products. And so that's why I saw the market opportunity and got motivated to dive in and learn how to make this stuff.
Well, don't you have to be some kind of scientist in order to make the products? I mean, there's the science of what it does, but then don't you have to, I mean, to make it work? No?
No, no, because I mean, this technology is well established. Almost all of my products make use of EMF shielding material, and the history of this goes back now almost 200 years to when Michael Faraday, the British scientist, created what we now call the Faraday cage, where he showed that if you weave conductive metals into certain patterns, you can block and deflect electromagnetic radiation in much the same way that a mirror deflects light. And so really what we do is select from available shielding technologies and then integrate them into product designs.
Got it. You've used electromagnetic radiation and electromagnetic frequency. Are they interchangeable?
Yes. Yeah. EMF is electromagnetic frequency. EMR is electromagnetic radiation, and they mean the same thing.
Let's talk about some of the health effects caused by EMF or EMR.
Sure. Well, so what the science says the story the science is telling us is that, and when I say the science, I'm talking about a body of many thousands of high quality peer reviewed studies, shows that these forces really impact essentially every biological system of every living being. And so, things like brain cancer get the headlines because it's terrifying. I mean, for understandable reasons, it's quite terrifying. And so that gets all the headlines. But it has been linked to numerous other negative health outcomes. I mean, ranging from sleep disruption on sort of the more minor, still impactful, but more minor side, all the way up to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Lou Gehrig's. And again, everything in between. There are certain reasons why people suspect it impacts such a wide range of systems, which we can talk about. But I also want to emphasize that it's not just in human beings. We see these sorts of negative health impacts in other animals, in insects, in flowers and trees. It is really a fundamental force of life, electromagnetic radiation. And when you're exposed to what are really very significant doses of artificial human-made EMF, it's going to throw off these systems.
Can we talk about the difference of the human-made versus, so what would be a natural source of EMF?
So electromagnetic radiation exists on what we call a spectrum. So you can think of it like a rainbow. In fact, the rainbow itself is part of this rainbow because right in the middle of the electromagnetic spectrum is visible light. So like what we get from the sun. In fact, that is the vast majority of EMF to which all life on Earth was exposed for the approximately 3.7 billion years that it has existed, is natural light from the sun. The Earth itself also has a magnetic field. There's certain other stars in the universe, just like the sun, they emit this type of radiation. Some of that radiation, a lot of it is filtered out by the atmosphere, but some of it still reaches us. And of course, lightning generates electromagnetic fields as well. And really, again, for 3.7 billion years, that was all of the EMF that life was exposed to, and it is the electromagnetic profile in which life evolved to thrive. So when we're talking about human-made forms, so I mentioned that visible light is right in the middle of this spectrum. So if you think of it left to right, to the left of visible light, you have all, well, actually, let me start the other way. To the right of visible light, you have all the forms of EMF with more energy. That is, that vibrate with a higher frequency than visible light. And these include X-rays and gamma rays, even ultraviolet. And these have so much energy that they can knock electrons loose from the cells in your body. Now, this is not anything that's in dispute at all. This is universally accepted science. And because they can knock electrons from cells, what that does is it's called that ionizes the cell, right? That's what it is when you knock an electron out of something. So it ionizes the cell. And that's why those forms of EMF are called ionizing radiation. And again, as I mentioned, this is universally accepted science. It's just fact. And it is considered, these forms of EMF are considered to be extremely dangerous, even in extremely low doses. I mean, I mentioned X-rays and gamma rays, right? I mean, there's a reason that when you get your dental X-rays, they cover you in lead and the technician leaves the room, right? Because you want as few exposures to this stuff as possible. Now, that was to the right of visible light. To the left of visible light, you have all the forms of EMF with less energy than visible light. Because they have less energy, they cannot ionize your cells, and that's why they're called non-ionizing forms of EMF. And so in this section is where we find all of the human-made EMF. And so that would include radio waves and microwaves, which are used for wireless communication. Obviously, microwaves are also used for cooking. Then you have infrared, which is used obviously, for remote controls. You have what is called extremely low frequency, or ELF, and those are the forms of EMF that are emitted by power lines and anything that runs on power. So that includes the electrical wiring in your walls, the transformer on the pole in front of your house, and your blender and your refrigerator and your TV and so forth. And so these are the these are the human-made forms of EMF. And for a long time, these were considered to be biologically benign. Now, there's a little bit of a proviso on that, right? As I mentioned, microwaves can be used to cook, right? That's what a microwave oven is. It uses microwave radiation to cook your food. So it's obvious that if these forms of EMF are powerful enough, they will cause a lot of damage. They will cause heating of your tissue and burning of your tissue. And that is dangerous. That is harmful. But at levels that are lower than what can cause the thermal effect, it was long believed that these forms of EMF were biologically benign, that they were safe, that they had no health impact. And it's really in the last 100 years that science really started to investigate the health effects. And it's particularly in the last 40 years, 30, 40 years, where science has really built up the body of knowledge to demonstrate that negative health impacts occur even with really, really low doses of exposure to these forces.
I had to laugh when you said that it was thought to be biologically benign and safe. And only in the last 40 years to 100 years have we actually looked at the negative side effects, which makes me think of, well, what was the criteria for determining if it was safe? Because just like genetically modified and engineered foods, I don't know who ever thought you could pass a pesticide into a seed and think that a poison that kills an insect wasn't going to have a negative effect on humans. So again, what is the logic behind how are we testing if it's...
Yeah, so that's a great point. It's a great topic because, first of all, a lot of this stuff doesn't get tested, right? We are actually the guinea pigs as the consumers. And so let's talk about brain tumors, right? If you wanted to actually, before allowing cell phones to be released on the market, you wanted to do a solid study to see if cell phones cause brain tumors. Well, brain tumors take decades to form, right? So you would have to, if you wanted to show that cell phones, when used against the head regularly, consistently, don't cause brain tumors, you would need at least a 20-year study to show that, which means, right, cell phones were released in the 1970s, right? So that data wouldn't have been out until the mid-90s at the earliest. But of course, that didn't happen because people were using cell phones in the 1970s. The same is true for Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi was deployed without any study into long-term health effects. The only benchmark that these technologies need to meet is, remember, I was referring to the thermal effect before, right? So, because if the radiation is powerful enough, it can cook your body. And so what these manufacturers need to show is that they don't emit so much EMF that they trigger the thermal effect. Now, as a lot of people who use cell phones will know, if you hold one against your head for a while, your ear starts to feel warm. And so we actually know that the thermal effect is being triggered. So the regulations, which are supposed to protect against the thermal effect, aren't fully protective against the thermal effect. But more importantly, there's a lot of science showing negative health outcomes at power levels much lower than what would trigger the thermal effect. And again, you can't test it. I mean, there are actually a few things you could test for in the short term, right? Because, for instance, men regenerate their sperm every 24 hours. And men who carry their phones in their pockets, you can see very negative outcomes in sperm quality, motility, quantity. And so that you can see within a day. And you can also see within a day when you take the phone away that the sperm health actually starts to improve again. But that's just one very limited example. In general, with the types of health effects we're talking about with electromagnetic radiation exposure, you need very long-term studies. And those aren't done before releasing technologies.
Well, I think there are other ways, not that they're going to do this, but there would be other ways. You could take a cell, you could test uh, the frequency from a cell. You could put it in an environment where you ask it to replicate, but you add the electromagnetic frequency to it. You can test the strength of a cell wall, the mitochondria. You can test its. I mean, I just think that there are other ways that
Yeah,
we
no,
could. But again, I know here's a product. Let's get out to the market. It'll help people generally. It might have a side effect, but we're not going to know for a long time. Let's just sell it anyway, because ultimately it's going to help
exactly.
benefit us in some way by connecting us through Wi-Fi, through cellular, through, I mean, the
The only
microwave. Yeah.
reason a manufacturer would do that is if they are forced to by regulation or by consumer demand. And neither of those exist as it comes to EMF device safety, right? So again, the regulations that exist, and by the way, they are not only, I've already mentioned that the regulations that exist protect against the thermal effect. Except that even that's not fully true, right? Because, for instance, in the United States, there are no regulations in terms of how much radiation your power line can expose you to. We have regulations on certain things like cell phones and Wi-Fi routers and so forth, and those regulations are all based around the thermal effect. So as long as the manufacturer is performing the SAR testing that shows the thermal effect isn't being triggered, it is deemed safe, even though it's entirely irresponsible to call it safe when you don't have any of the testing to show that it's actually safe.
Well, we barely have regulations for safe food in this country, so it's fine. I don't expect it when it comes to big business of advancing technology for other reasons. Again, it's sort of that I'm sure people just decide, well, this is worth whatever negative effects we're having because it increases commerce, it increases connection, it increases
And
production,
that's
it
a valid
increases.
that's a valid argument as long as you're having that debate publicly. But that's not the position that these companies take.
Right. And nobody asks any questions to I mean, really, logically, who thought putting a poison in a plant that you would then eat was going to be safe for you? It kills bugs. It just makes no sense. But anyway, as I digress, because so let's talk about actually as I was sitting here and remembering, because I have a integrative doctor who we muscle tested a bunch of things, and when he muscle tested me for EMF exposure, like if I had too much and I didn't test positively for it, I was like, okay, good, phew, because I'm sitting here amongst my light, my computer, right? I have my cell phone, my iPad. Although, by the way, I have a flip phone. I do have when I talk on the phone, which is rare, I mostly use my iPad and I don't ever obviously put it up to my ear when I do anything for that. And it doesn't sit in a purse anymore. It's not in a pocket. I do carry it everywhere I go. But we first moved into this house and I set up my office, I was concerned about EMF. And I bought this. I don't know what you think about it or if you sell one because I don't even know. I bought an
I
EMF
sell that
tester.
one.
You
Yeah, I
sell this
sell that.
one? Okay. All
Yeah.
right, good. That's good to know. I think I've only used it once. It's been sitting at my desk. I'm like, I should probably test it again just to make sure everything is good. So you had said at the beginning of this conversation that obviously we can't get away from it. Like you can minimize by, which everyone would be great to do, where you have hours of no screen time, where you don't have it in your bedroom,
Hmm.
where you don't have it always on Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. Like you minimize that. Like when I go, I actually use your cell phone cover that if you came to the Embodied Healing Intensive or if you came to Awaken Your Dream Life, actually, R was donated, was a sponsor for both of those events. So you have a cell phone cover that is a protective shield from your body, shielding your body from the EMFs that you may have. Now, when I do this at night, it's because I'm listening to binaural beats or to a meditation, but my Wi-Fi shut off. I'm on airplane mode. Bluetooth is shut off. I'm doing everything I possibly can to reduce the
Excellent.
exposure
Yeah.
because I don't ultimately want to have this. I do have an iPod, but they don't make iPods anymore. So I have an iPod. That would be ideal in terms of what I could listen to, but you can't. I had one of those little shuffles, so you can't even see like what you're
Hmm.
pressing on. You have to forward it so many times. So let's talk about this idea that have, actually, before we get to the technology of all the things that we could have to help minimize the damage when we're being exposed, let's talk about some of the things that you recommend for reducing exposure, just in general.
Sure. Well, so you either want to turn off the thing that's emitting EMF, or you want to be as far away from it as possible, right? So you want to minimize your use of EMF generating technologies, and you want to maximize the distance between your body and the source when it is in use. So an example of minimizing your exposure, minimizing your use of the technology, would be putting your phone into airplane mode before putting it into your pocket. Or turning off your Wi-Fi network at night, or swapping it out entirely for hardwired Ethernet at your house, for example. Avoiding, buying an Alexa smart speaker or a Nest thermostat. Increasingly, there are this huge variety of devices out there that have turned products that never were sources of EMF into sources of EMF. And a lot of them are designed to operate 24/7, contributing additional radiation into your living space constantly. So skipping, and there's obviously solid arguments to be made for some of this smart tech. And so when something really makes sense, a device really makes sense, then get it and use it. But if you don't really need this additional source of EMF in your home, don't get it, right? So an example, there's other less serious examples than this, but an example that frequently comes up in emails, a lot of these medical devices now have Bluetooth and or Wi-Fi running a lot of the time, if not 24/7. And that would include things like pacemakers and continuous glucose monitors and hearing aids. And I would say in all three of those cases, I would much rather that the manufacturer made at least an airplane mode option for these products. But since they don't, and since the dumb versions are no longer made, the versions without wireless, if you need one of those technologies, by all means, get one of those technologies, because those are important to your lifestyle, to your health, and your quality of life. But again, an Alexa smart speaker, a Nest thermostat, they have smart kitty litter boxes now. They have smart tampons. They have smart hairbrushes, smart toothbrushes. They have smart everything. And if you just don't need this stuff. And every one of those that you get is increasing your exposure profile. So that's minimizing your use. Now, maximizing the distance, a good example of that is, well, right now I'm on my laptop, but the laptop is 2.5 feet away from me. And I have an external wired keyboard, an external wired trackball, and so forth. So the laptop is further away from me, which means that I have much less exposure to the radiation that's coming off of it. Another would be putting the Wi-Fi router as far away from where you and your family spend the bulk of your time, keeping it as far away from that point as possible. Keeping your phone out of your bedroom at night. These are all examples of maximizing distance. And of course, I forgot to mention, never holding the phone up against your head. In fact, by the way, I'll just emphasize, some of your listeners may not know this, while when you pick up a phone, your natural inclination is to say, oh, well, let me hold it against my head, right? Because it looks like that's how it's designed to be used. But with the iPhone, for example, that's not how the manual says you are supposed to use it. Because if you are using it that way, you are exposing yourself to more radiation than the government says you are allowed to be exposed to from a cell phone. But you have to read the fine print to get that. Meanwhile, they design a device that looks that's obviously designed to be held against your head, but then they put in the fine print that no, you need to keep a minimum distance of separation. Another example is laptops. Dell has laptops that they actually call laptops. They don't call them notebooks. And if you read the manual, you're supposed to keep 8 inches between the laptop and your body when the laptop is in use. So there's a lot of these examples out there. So you just want to create as much distance as possible as is viable when using anything that emits electromagnetic radiation.
Talk about wired earbuds versus iPods.
AirPods.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So AirPods and all Bluetooth wireless headsets use Bluetooth. Bluetooth is basically Wi-Fi, but with less power. So it's Wi-Fi radio. It's EMF radiation, 2.4 gigahertz wireless radiation, which on its own is not healthy. But when you pair it with the fact that these earbuds are obviously designed to go in your ear, that is obviously very close to your brain. It's also close to your eyes, which are another sensitive organ, but it's close to your brain, and it's in a part of your head where there's no bone because the ear canal goes through the skull. There's no bone there, and bone would provide at least some natural degree of shielding. So you're keeping it very close to what most people would consider to be a very important organ in their bodies, and you're doing it generally for extended periods of time. I see people walking around all day with their AirPods in so they can just answer a call, or at least one AirPod in so they can answer a call if it comes through. So these are really significant exposures. I will also add that's an example of a technology that can't be used more safely, right? You can't use an AirPod at a greater distance. It has to go in your ear. And also because it goes in your ear, there's no way to put in a layer of shielding between the AirPod and your body, the way that you can with certain other technology, like you were showing with the phone pouch. You can put a layer of shielding between the phone and your body to mitigate some of the exposure. With these Bluetooth headsets, you cannot.
So basically the plugins are much safer.
Yes.
Yes, because there's no right.
Sorry,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I know it's fine.
Home. Yeah.
No, because I have to spell it out for some people because they're not going to hear because they're going to think, well, there's no other option, or I don't like to put things in my ears.
Yeah,
Well, if
wired
your option,
headphones
right?
or speakerphone.
Yeah, I hate speakerphone. Please don't use speakerphone in public, people. It's annoying. I used to hate that when people would put you on speakerphone. I'm thinking, is there more people involved in this conversation that I can't see? Why am I on speakerphone? I don't know. It just feels disrespectful. Or the people that yell into their phones because they can't hear. I'm like, so put some earbuds in. Oh, I don't like things in my ears. I'm like, then drive to the person and have the conversation. Why does everyone else have to be bothered by your conversation? I mean, if we all walked around on our phones talking at normal decibels that we do at home, it would be rude because nobody would hear anybody else because we'd be so busy, right? Like
Yeah.
when the phones were only in your home, it was not a big deal. It rang, you talked on it, no big deal. But now we walk around with them, and when people gather together in groups and everybody's phone's ringing and everyone's talking on their phone, it's chaos. So, which kind of is an example of what what this frequency is like, except that now here we are all in chaos. Like we're trying to reduce the amount of chaos and the amount of movement. So now your products, let's talk about your products. I have several to show. Like I already showed the cell phone. Do you have an iPad one, by the way? Because I could use
We
iPad
have not a pouch, but a tablet, a pad. So you can use it under your iPad when you're using your iPad.
I also have I at the local crystal shop, we've got like shungite. So shungite is a crystal. It's a grounding crystal. It's black. Anyway, and it's supposed to help with EMF exposure as well. So I have them on, actually I have them on the back of this phone and the back of my iPad. And I think I gave Doug one too. Just trying to do the best I can when I can to offset some of
those
this.
types of products have a lot of appeal because they're just easy. They're pretty affordable. I haven't yet seen any science that demonstrates to my satisfaction their efficacy.
Has someone been doing the science on it though? I would imagine that the crystal industry, no one's spending any money to do research on that.
There's been some studies into it. I'm not super on top of, but so the thing is the with the types of products that I make and sell, and I also now sell, by the way, products from many other companies in my store. So I'm not only just talking about my products, but the ones I also carry. They use shielding technology, and as I explained, and what shielding does is it blocks and deflects radiation. And what that means is using, for instance, that TF2, that meter that you showed earlier, using that meter, you can see that these products are actually working to reduce exposure. You can measure it and you can see it. With products like these stickers and pendants, the claims that they're making aren't actually measurable. There's no way to quantify the beneficial effect that they are marketing. And so, in order to actually evaluate that, I mean, you would need science of some sort to support it, because there's no other way of knowing if it's actually working or doing what it claims.
Well,
And
I
so,
have I have some of the different products, the stickers and things, but this is an actual crystal, like it's an actual stone.
yeah, no, I'm
Um,
aware.
oh,
Shungite organite is another one. And
yeah.
I'm not saying they don't work. I want to be super clear. I'm not saying they don't work. I'm saying because what they're claiming to do is not actually measurable, and there's no science to support the claims beyond that of which I'm aware, it's very uncomfortable for me and others in my industry to really endorse these products,
I
because
understand.
there are also a lot of fake products on the market when you're talking about EMF protection, because EMF on its own is kind of complex. It's also, we didn't mention it, but everyone on the listening knows it's invisible, it's odorless, you can't taste it or touch it, or unless you're extremely sensitive, feel it. And so you're dealing with this totally invisible force that's already complicated. Most people don't have meters. And so it's very easy to market out of fear products that are essentially complete snake oil. I am not saying that shungite and organite are those. It's just, it's an aspect of the market that I'm in, which is why I focus so heavily on products that do have measurable, demonstrable claims.
Totally understand. And I'm not trying to replace any products with a shungite or any of the crystals. There are a lot of sciences that aren't widely accepted. And I'm not saying anyone has, because to have a study, you have to have someone has to pay to have the study. They have to do a
Mm-hmm.
controlled study, and who's going to do that? People who are selling crystals are not going to be doing that.
Yeah.
And there's no organization or government that gives a shit enough for them to spend money on on selling something they're not going to make any profit off of. So I also understand that that's the way the studies work in this world, is that it's, whoever's paying for the study is somewhat influencing what we're looking for potentially. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that doesn't mean it's not true, but again, it's all sort of epigenetically influenced by what is the condition, what is the goal of this study that I'm doing, and who's paying for it. Because there's a lot of studies that show us things that we know either, the person that paid for it was looking for that example, was looking for that outcome to support whatever they're trying to sell. Now, I know that's not the case in EMF, because I've had a ton of different, I had a couple medical intuitives, again, non-scientific, but actually yes, but not in the same way we can measure it with devices, but who were testing certain EMF stuff that I was being exposed to or talked about, and a lot of it was not working. So I do agree, and I do, and I believe that yours do. I mean, because of between the extensive research both from your data and from you, I've been using the products. So I have the blue blockers. By the way, do you have any newer styles of this for women potentially? I mean, these aren't
Yes,
awful,
we
but
do. So we have, sorry, a couple of new styles of blue light glasses on the website. Those are from one of our partners. So again, yeah, last time we spoke, ShieldYourBody.com only sold Shield Your Body products. And we still sell Shield Your Body products, but now we have products from a dozen other brands as well available on the store. So we have almost 200 different products in our store now.
okay, great. I will be checking them out because while these are functional, they aren't pretty. Um, so I, so recording a podcast of them is not ideal. Okay, obviously there's the pouch that everybody from everyone from EHI, Embodied Healing Intensive, got, that I think is a brilliant thing for you to use as much as you can. I don't actually use a smartphone. Like I said, I have a flip phone when I'm on the phone, or I use my iPad. So the only time that I use this is at night with this burner phone. I take pictures on it, and I use Insight Timer, and I have some files for like binaural beats and stuff. And then your bag. Can we talk about the bag? This is beautiful. Thank you.
Oh yeah, so that's the SYB Purse, and so The pouch and the purse, obviously, and I don't know, are people watching this on YouTube or just hearing
Yes,
it?
well,
Oh,
both. So if you're
okay,
here, obviously, if you haven't figured out now, we've done a, I always say at the beginning of the show that we did a video. So come on over to jjflizanes.tv so you can watch the video so you can see what I'm showing you.
excellent. So yeah, the pouch and the purse, they may look like very different products, but in my mind and in my store, they're actually in the same category, right? Which is products that are designed to make it safer to carry your phone, and in the case of the purse, other tech as well. You know, perhaps a Kindle or an iPad. And so the way all of these products work, they're all pouches and bags, and the back of the pouch is shield, or purse is shielded, and the other side isn't. And if you open up the lip, you'll see one side says "hold towards body," and
This side to body. Okay.
yep. So
Yeah. So
that's the
basically, it's
shielded side.
logo out. It's logo
Yes.
out, not logo in.
Yep.
Okay.
And so when the way these work is because they have shielding that lines the part of the bag or pouch that's closest to your body, it's deflecting radiation from your device in the other direction. And so we have the pouch, as you've said, we have the purse, as you've shown. We have a pouch deluxe, which is a crossbody bag. We have a couple of styles of fanny packs or waist bags. We have a sling bag, which is another style of crossbody bag. This is a use case that I really think is important because I believe that for a lot of people, carrying their phones in their pockets is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, exposures in their lives, right? Because again, these phones are very high powered devices. When they're in your pocket, or in the case of some people in their bra, there's no distance between the device and your body. So you're getting, not only is it a powerful device, you're getting the maximum possible dose of radiation that this device has to offer. And people tend to do it for extended periods at a time, every day of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the safest option is to put your phone into airplane mode, fully airplane mode, before putting it in your pocket, which is what I do a lot of the time, because then there's no real emissions from your phone. But of course, when you do that, you're not going to get calls, you're not going to get texts, you're not going to get any kind of wireless communication. So a lot of people aren't actually willing to do that. So we need options to make it safer to carry your phone, and people have different preferences how they want, to carry their phone. So a pouch will work for some people, whereas the fanny packs will work for other people, whereas the purse is a better option for another set of customers. So that's why that's a category I've chosen to focus on in particular.
No, it makes sense. And I haven't used the purse yet because I wanted to wait to unveil it while we were discussing this, but it is a very pretty purse. I was excited to get it, and I'm due for a new iPad because in the how many years have I had one? I've had iPads for 12 years. My first one was in 2012, and this is the first time I've ever cracked a screen. So I have a
Ooh,
cracked screen, so it is
bummer.
time for a new one. So I'm thinking of getting a smaller one, and it'll fit in the purse.
Yeah.
That will be good. I mean, just a little bit smaller one. Not I choose an iPad for the reason that it is bigger and it can kind of act like a laptop, if you will. Like I can do things on it. I can see things easily. In fact, I'd like it to be my phone. I would use it as my phone. I'm waiting for the day that we can skip over the little smartphone and just go straight to an iPad. I can just do everything on the same, large device. But let's talk about so all the things that are close to the body, that's where you're shielding. Are there other products that you either sell, whether they're yours or not, that are home products to protect, like the protect that like me right now in my office? What could I do
So
to
that
help
kind
that?
of stuff, yeah. So obviously, that's an area where a lot of people are concerned. Shielding. So let's say you live in a high EMF area, right? So there's cell towers outside or something like that. Those are, I tell you to turn off your Wi-Fi router. You can't go outside and turn off the cell tower. And so protecting against those sources of exposure in your home is actually quite complicated. It's not always able to do it. And even if you are, it's very expensive and involved, right? Because you're talking about painting your walls with shielding paint, putting up shielding film on your windows. Then you can't open your windows, and so on and so forth. So in terms of that use case, what we have at Shield Your Body are bed canopies, right? So that doesn't protect your whole home, but it does protect your entire bed, which is your entire body for approximately, a third of your life. And so with our bed canopies, you can create a EMF sanctuary in your sleeping area, which a lot of people find very effective and gives them tremendous relief. But that's if you're talking about sources outside of your control. If you're talking about sources inside your control, right? So let's talk about Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi tends to be a very significant source of exposure for people. Obviously, ditching the Wi-Fi for Ethernet is the optimal solution, but a lot of people aren't willing to do that. And so we have a couple of solutions in my store that are from partners. One is called the Signal Tamer, and it's like a blanket you can put over your Wi-Fi router. And so it reduces the amount of radiation that's coming off your Wi-Fi router. Now, obviously, that will also reduce the range of your Wi-Fi, so you can adjust the blanket to the right, so it covers just enough of the router that you get the coverage you want, but you've still made a big difference in your exposure. Another really interesting product in my store is the JRS Eco router, and that's made by a partner of ours in Europe who has customized Wi-Fi routers so that they provide the same degree of performance as regular Wi-Fi routers, but with 90% less EMF when it's in use and 0 EMF when it's not in use, right? So, because for example, let's say all of your tech in your home is off except your Wi-Fi router. It's still blasting radiation. Doesn't matter that there's no active connections. The way they're engineered, they don't care about, there's no design priority saying minimize the EMF. So it's blasting EMF all the time, even when it's not in use. The way that JRS routers work is they're not emitting anything until a device tries to connect to it. And then once that connection's established, he's also modified it so that it cuts the amount of radiation down by 90%. And he does this without negatively impacting the range of your network. So those are examples of what you could do inside of the home to make a big difference, home or office.
Okay, and then I get to say, Doug, guess what R said we need? I get to blame you and say this is what we need, so you have to get it.
Yeah, so
we are hardwired, but we still have Wi-Fi too.
Yeah. I'm the same. I turn the Wi-Fi on demand, but I am hardwired. We actually have a course on Shield Your Body. I believe it's $19. It's called How to Hardwire Your Internet, and it includes a full tutorial, including a shopping list of everything that you would need to do it. And I did it. I implemented hardwiring in because all my walls are solid concrete. It's very hard to kind of get into them. So I did it using these Netgear Powerline Ethernet adapters, which Kathy, the instructor, talks about in the course. So I can run Ethernet from my main router to one of these Netgear adapters, plug it into an outlet, then plug another adapter into another outlet in another room, and then run Ethernet off of it. So I could hardwire my home without installing an Ethernet network.
Nice. Well, for $19, it's worth checking it out, everybody. So let's talk about, obviously, we're going to send everybody to shieldyourbody.com to look around and to get some stuff. What do you need? Where are you overexposed? Where could you reduce your exposure? What kind of symptoms do you have? What kind of ailments are you dealing with that all the doctors and the diet changes and the things aren't helping with? Because you could probably find some relief by taking care of this first. And then that way your body can help itself heal. Because right now it's just trying to survive under these conditions. So it would be best to remove some of the conditions, change some of the conditions, give your body a break so that it can do what it does best with all the other tools that you're using. Anything you want to tell them about, any kind of specials that we have, any kind of discount we can provide for JJ's audience, or any kind
sure. I didn't create it in advance. I'll create it now. JJ10 will get 10% off site-wide.
Excellent.
So that's off of every product in the store. As I mentioned, we have almost 200 products. I will also mention we recently brought another brand into our little ecosystem. It's called Bagby, and they make we make a catalog of products that are designed to get the phone out of your bedroom. So these aren't EMF protection per se, but they provide EMF protection because if you can get the phone out of your bedroom, you've reduced your EMF exposure, as well as significantly improved your sleep quality and your mental state. So some of the most popular Bagby products, and I know there's at least one of these in your house, is an alarm clock.
Oh, Doug has it in
Um,
his office, so it's
oh,
in his
okay.
office.
Yeah. And it's a nice battery powered, very elegantly designed analog alarm clock. And the reason that fits into this the vision that I was explaining is because a lot of people bring their phone when you tell them they should stop bringing their phones to bed. They say, "But I use it as an alarm clock." And so let's give them an alarm clock and let's make sure it's battery powered, so that so it doesn't have to plug into the wall, because if it plugs into the wall, it becomes a conduit for EMF. And it's analog, not digital, so that it doesn't add artificial light and blue light to your environment. And so
Perfect.
it's really a great solution. They're really popular, and you can find those at shieldyourbody.com as well.
All right. JJ10. Yeah, I used to use so my flip phone, shout out to flip phones, which it's in the other room otherwise. Oh, no, it's not. Here, it's right here. My flip phone, and I used to have Ericsson for the longest time. I don't even know. It's T-Mobile, but I don't know Alcatel. My Ericsson flip phone used to, with the power off, I could put an alarm on it and it would ring and it would wake me up at the time with the power off.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and then they stopped doing that because I can't do that with this one. And then I also had my heart rate monitor would also be an alarm that I used for a long time. And then I got a new one recently, but from my client Julie, shout out Julie, who ordered too many, so she gave me one. But yeah, that was the best feature of the flip phone, with being able to shut it off and then it would turn on to wake me up at the
Yeah,
time,
that's
and then it would
great.
turn back off. But unfortunately, that doesn't work with this one anymore. So yeah, alarm is a thing, and that's why I wanted to start off by saying, like, for me, with the, because we have all these great apps that we use for sleeping and stuff, but it kind of defeats the purpose if your Wi-Fi is on and your Bluetooth is on and you're sleeping on a battery without any protection. So at least do what you can if you're going to keep this technology as part of your sleeping, to protect yourself with,
Hmm.
again, either the cell phone shield, turning off the Wi-Fi, turning off the Bluetooth, putting it on airplane mode, all the things. And then depending on the state of your health, I would really consider, and I believe you do consultations too, don't you? Are
I personally, Shield Your Body does.
okay.
So we have certified experts. They're certified as electromagnetic radiation specialists by the Building Biology Institute. And we offer consulting services remotely. So you can book it on the website, and the session happens over Zoom. It can be recorded. You can download it. You can ask whatever questions that you would like. And it is a really fantastic service. We also include that for free with certain product purchases. So for instance, if you purchase a canopy, you get a free half-hour consultation with an expert. If you purchase one of our NCB products, those are filters for grounding products to remove EMF pollution. If for people who use grounding sheets or grounding mats, we have a filter for that. We have a consultation included with those products as well.
Great. So in case you're wondering, and you need some help assessing your situation and what would be best for you, go ahead and get one of those or buy one of the products that comes with it, and ask for some help and some guidance. And make sure you're shielding your body, everybody. Thank you, R, for coming on the show.
Thank you so much
And
for having me, JJ. It's great to talk to you again.
yeah, and thank you again for all of the wonderful products for the attendees of the Embodied Healing Intensive and for Awaken Your Dream Life. Everybody, make sure to pull them out of your bag and use them.